On Valentine's Day, 1943, somewhere in the Solomon Islands, a Japanese naval aviator's pencil moved across the pages of his flight log with a slight tremor. The words he wrote would have brought severe consequences if anyone at Rabaul discovered them. What he recorded was this: "The new American fighter is not what we were told. It is not inferior. It is something we cannot comprehend." Over Guadalcanal, through the thick smoke of intense combat, Japanese pilots were meeting an adversary they'd never encountered before. The Americans called it the F-4U Corsair, and on that February morning, 12 of these aircraft from Marine Fighter Squadron 124 engaged the Japanese forces with mixed success. The battle would later become known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 2 Corsairs fell that day, along with several other Allied planes. Japanese losses were heavy as well. What seemed like a tactical stumble for the Allies actually marked something far more significant: the arrival of an aircraft that would reshape the entire air war across the Pacific. The Corsairs' appearance signaled the beginning of the end for Japanese naval aviation and everything they believed about air superiority, technology, and the dominance of the Mitsubishi Zero. The pilots defending Rabaul had no way of knowing they were witnessing the start of something catastrophic. Within months, the veterans who had swept across Pacific skies since Pearl Harbor would find themselves flying one-way missions in aging fighters. The very foundations of aerial combat were being rewritten. It wasn't about skill or warrior spirit anymore. The new equation centered on engine power, armor plating, and production capacity. Numbers that revealed a terrible miscalculation embedded in Japan's entire war strategy. To understand the shock that the Corsair would deliver to Japanese naval aviation, you have to first grasp the absolute confidence that filled Japanese officers' minds at the start of 1943. For 2 years, the Navy's Zero fighters had owned the Pacific skies almost without challenge. The numbers they accumulated were almost intoxicating to contemplate. At Pearl Harbor, just 9 Zeros had been shot down while destroying 188 American aircraft. Over the Philippines, Zero pilots claimed 550 Allied planes destroyed in the opening week, losing fewer than 40 of their own. During the Indian Ocean raid, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida recorded that Zeros had shot down 45 British aircraft, while losing only 4. The kill ratios spoke of something approaching divine superiority, often 10-1 in Japan's favor or better. Warrant Officer Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, who would end the war as Japan's leading ace with 87 confirmed victories, wrote to his younger brother in February 1943 with complete conviction, "The Zero is the perfect weapon, harmonizing with the pilot's spirit like a samurai sword. Americans build flying trucks, heavy, clumsy, without soul. They cannot match our unity of man and machine." This wasn't mere boasting. The Zero's actual performance numbers from 1941 and 1942 genuinely exceeded anything the Allies could put into the air. It possessed a range of 1,029 miles, allowing it to escort bombers distances that seemed impossible to American planners. Its turn radius of 612 feet at 200 miles per hour was nearly half that of the American F-4F Wildcat. It could climb to 15,000 feet in 5 minutes and 30 seconds, a full minute faster than any American opponent. Lieutenant Konami Harada, a Pearl Harbor veteran carrying 19 victories who would live through the war, described the experience in a 1976 interview. "We felt invincible in our Zeros. The aircraft responded to thought, not just control input. We could dance in the air while the Americans lumbered. Their pilots were brave, but they flew cattle compared to our thoroughbreds." By the end of 1942, however, unsettling signs were beginning to emerge, though the Japanese Naval Command refused to acknowledge them. The Battle of Midway had taken more than 4 carriers. It had claimed 110 of Japan's most experienced naval aviators. These weren't replaceable losses. Many had logged over 1,000 hours of flight time and possessed combat experience from campaigns in China. More alarming still were technical reports trickling back from the front lines. Commander Minoru Genda, the tactical mastermind behind Pearl Harbor, who would later help rebuild Japan's post-war air self-defense force, noted in classified reports that American fighters were becoming tougher to destroy. The new F-6F Hellcat, encountered in limited numbers, seemed to absorb enormous amounts of damage. Pilots reported striking American aircraft with dozens of 7.7mm rounds that should have brought them down, yet they kept flying. The Guadalcanal campaign revealed another disturbing trend. American numerical strength was growing steadily. Where Japanese pilots once faced equal or smaller numbers of opponents, by early 1943 they regularly encountered American formations of 20, 30, even 50 aircraft. The philosophy of Bushido could not overcome the arithmetic of industrial production. The first confirmed engagement between Zeros and F-4U Corsairs took place on February 14, 1943. 12 Corsairs from VMF 124, having touched down at Guadalcanal just 2 days before, were escorting PB-4Y Liberators on a bombing run. The battle produced losses on both sides. 2 Corsairs were shot down, along with 4 P-40s, 4 P-38s, and 2 Liberators. Japanese forces lost 3 Zeros and additional bombers. The fight ended without a clear winner, yet it introduced a machine that would soon command Pacific skies. What Japanese technical analysts discovered about the Corsairs' specifications was genuinely frightening. The F-4U-1's Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine produced 2,000 horsepower, more than double the Zero's 950 horsepower Nakajima Sakai 12 engine in the A6M2 model, or the 130 horsepower Sakai 21 found in the later A6M5. This power translated into performance that made traditional Zero tactics obsolete. Maximum speed reached 417 miles per hour against the Zero's 331 miles per hour in the A6M2, or 351 miles per hour in the A6M5. It could reach 20,000 feet in 7.5 minutes compared to the Zero's 12 minutes. It maintained control in dives exceeding 450 miles per hour, while Zeros experienced control surface lock above 350 miles per hour. During Operation Waigo in April 1943, the shifting power dynamic became unmistakable. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto launched what would be his final major offensive, dispatching 224 aircraft, including 110 Zeros, against Allied positions. At Guadalcanal, they encountered 76 Allied fighters, among them Corsairs from Marine fighter squadrons. The outcome devastated Japan, 39 aircraft lost against only 12 Allied fighters destroyed. Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, who would later command VMF 214, the famous Black Sheep Squadron, and finished the war with 28 victories, participated in these early Corsair operations. He would later write in his autobiography about the tactics that were emerging. The Zero was a dream to fly and fight in if you stayed slow, but we didn't stay slow. We came in high and fast, shot, and kept going. The Corsair pilots developed what became known as the boom and zoom tactic. They would dive from altitude, fire during the high-speed pass, then use their extra energy to climb away before the Zeros could employ their superior maneuverability. It was a technique perfectly suited to the Corsairs' strengths and the Zeros' weaknesses. In May 1943, Japanese technical teams examined captured Allied aircraft and compiled reports from field pilots. What they uncovered filled them with dread. The Corsairs' construction revealed industrial capabilities Japan simply could not match. Its armor plating alone, 155 pounds of it protecting the pilot, oil tank and oil cooler, weighed more than some entire Japanese trainer aircraft. The bulletproof windscreen measured 38mm thick, capable of stopping 7.7mm machine gun rounds at point-blank range. The self-sealing fuel tanks, built with layers of rubber that expanded when punctured, prevented the fires that had killed so many Zero pilots. The armament proved most devastating. 6 Browning M2 .50 caliber machine guns, each firing rounds with 8 times the kinetic energy of the 7.7mm weapons. Carrying 2,350 rounds total, the Corsair could maintain continuous fire for 30 seconds, triple what a Zero could manage. The AN-M2 armor-piercing incendiary rounds could penetrate 21mm of armor at 500 yards. The Zero, by comparison, possessed essentially zero armor protection. By June 1943, intelligence reaching Japanese naval headquarters painted a picture of American production that defied comprehension. The United States would ultimately produce 12,571 Corsairs by war's end. Vought manufacturing 4,952 F4U1 variants, and additional later models, Goodyear producing 3,941 FG variants, and Brewster manufacturing 735 F3A variants. Japan, meanwhile, would manufacture 10,449 Zeros throughout the entire war. Mitsubishi building 3,879 and Nakajima 6,570. Yet raw numbers revealed only part of the story. American production included continuous improvement and refinement. The F4U-1A introduced a raised cockpit for better visibility. The F4U-1C mounted 20 mm cannons. The F4U-1D could carry 4,000 pounds of ordnance. The F4U-4, introduced in late 1944, featured a 2,450 horsepower engine and 446 miles per hour top speed. Meanwhile, the A6M5, Japan's most produced Zero variant, represented only marginal improvements over the original 1940 model. The Corsairs' technical dominance exposed a fatal flaw in Japanese naval aviation doctrine: the inability to replace experienced pilots. The pre-war Japanese training program had been extraordinarily rigorous, featuring a 95% washout rate that produced pilots of exceptional caliber. This system, however, could only generate about 100 new pilots yearly. The United States Navy's expanded training program, by contrast, was producing 2,500 pilots monthly by 1943. These American pilots received 600 hours of flight instruction before combat deployment, including 200 hours flying advanced fighters. Japanese replacement pilots in 1943 averaged between 100 and 150 hours total flight time. By 1945, some kamikaze pilots would have fewer than 40 hours. The mathematics were merciless and one-directional. Each experienced Zero pilot lost meant replacement by someone carrying 1/6 of the training. Each Corsair pilot shot down would be replaced by someone with equal or superior preparation. With every engagement, the qualitative gap widened further. Rabaul, Japan's fortress in the South Pacific, became the graveyard of Japanese naval aviation. Between October 1943 and February 1944, continuous battles against Corsair-equipped squadrons produced casualty rates that annihilated Japan's remaining core of experienced pilots. The statistics from these months reveal a story of systematic destruction. On November 11, 1943, carrier air groups brought Corsairs to strike Rabaul's harbors and airfields. From 270 Japanese aircraft available, 35 were destroyed and 40 damaged. By December 17, 1943, when Allied forces launched another major raid featuring 31 Marine Corsairs, 22 Navy Hellcats, and 23 RNZAF P-40s, Japanese forces could mount only token resistance. The few interceptors that managed to get airborne were destroyed quickly. By January 1944, Japanese pilots were refusing to engage Corsairs unless they commanded overwhelming numerical superiority, a complete reversal from 1941, when single Zeros would attack entire enemy squadrons. While F4U Corsairs did not participate in the Battle of the Philippine Sea on June 19, 1944, where carrier operations remained primarily the domain of F6F Hellcats, that engagement demonstrated the complete reversal of aerial supremacy that new American fighters had achieved. The toll on Japan's fighting force proved absolutely devastating. The numbers told a stark story. 445 Japanese aircraft shot down against just 30 American planes lost in actual combat. The air superiority equation had flipped completely. Japan had enjoyed a 10-to-1 advantage in 1941, but now America held an astonishing 15-to-1 edge. The tables had turned with ruthless finality. A handful of Corsairs operated from land-based Marine squadrons, providing support from a distance. Yet what these aircraft accomplished reflected something far deeper than mere numbers. They represented a fundamental technological and training advantage. The Japanese Naval Aviation Force, once considered invincible, would never recover from this humiliation. As 1944 drew to a close, the remaining Japanese aviators faced something far worse than physical defeat. Their confidence had crumbled entirely. These men had started the war as members of what they believed was the world's finest naval aviation force. Now they climbed into their cockpits, knowing with absolute certainty that they were inferior in every single measurable category. Saburo Sakai, Japan's greatest surviving fighter ace with 64 confirmed kills, later reflected on this period in his memoir titled Samurai. His words carried the weight of someone who had lived through the transformation. We had lost our advantage in equipment, we had lost it in numbers, we had lost it in the quality of our pilots. We had lost it in everything. When the new American fighters arrived, they spelled only one thing for our younger men: death. These young pilots possessed neither the experience required for survival nor aircraft capable of escape. The introduction of the F-4U-4 Corsair in October 1944 shattered any remaining hope. This variant boasted a 2,450 horsepower engine, capable of generating 2,760 horsepower with water injection, and could reach 446 miles per hour. It simply outmatched the Zero in every conceivable flight characteristic. The psychological journey from confident elite pilots to kamikaze attackers represented history's most complete reversal of fortune. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, who established the first kamikaze units that October, laid out the grim calculation during a staff meeting. His logic was brutal and simple. If conventional attacks continued, Japan would lose all its aircraft anyway for minimal damage to the enemy. Through suicide attacks, they would still sacrifice every plane, but at least might achieve meaningful results. The first coordinated kamikaze assault occurred on October 25, 1944, during the battle at Leyte Gulf. 50 fighters equipped with 250-kilogram bombs struck toward American escort carriers. Corsair pilots from Marine squadrons found themselves in an entirely new role, intercepting one-way suicide attacks. The war had transformed into something nobody anticipated. Before his final flight, Lieutenant Yukio Seki, commanding the inaugural official kamikaze mission, wrote words that cut through all the patriotic rhetoric. "Japan faces a grim future," he wrote, "if it must sacrifice its finest pilots this way." He went further still. "I am not flying this mission for the Emperor, not for the Empire, but simply because I received orders to do so." By 1945, captured documents and post-war examination revealed precisely how vast the technological divide had become. The Corsair cruised at 446 miles per hour, while the Zero achieved 351. Service ceiling for the American fighter reached 41,500 feet. The Japanese aircraft managed 36,250. The American climbed at 3,870 feet per minute. The Japanese managed 2,625. Raw power, the Corsair generated 2,760 horsepower with water injection. The Zero produced 1,300. Empty weight differences were equally stark. The American aircraft weighed 9,205 pounds, the Japanese only 4,136. Firepower revealed another chasm. The Corsair delivered 6.7 pounds of ammunition every second, the Zero only 2.3. Armor protection? The American fighter carried 155 pounds of protective plating. The Japanese aircraft carried none whatsoever. Fuel tank protection. The Americans used self-sealing tanks, the Japanese used nothing. The production statistics that emerged after the war explained the fundamental impossibility of Japan's position. In 1944 alone, America manufactured 17,731 fighters out of a total production of 28,180 aircraft. Japan produced 5,474 fighters from a total of 28,180 aircraft. Economic output told an even more damning story. American GDP in 1944 reached $1,499 billion in 1990 international currency. Japan's economy generated only $189 billion. The United States possessed 8 times Japan's economic capacity, churning out more than 3 times as many quality fighters while maintaining superior manufacturing standards throughout. The casualties painted an even grimmer picture. By war's end, Japan had lost approximately 25,000 naval aviators. America lost 8,950 naval aviators in Pacific operations. But the composition of these losses exposed the real tragedy. Japan had lost 90% of its pre-war trained pilots by midway through 1944. America never lost more than 15% of its experienced aviator corps at any single moment. By 1945, Japanese pilot training had essentially ceased to exist. Fresh pilots entered combat with merely 30 to 100 hours of flight time, while American pilots received 600 hours before combat operations. Many kamikaze attackers had never fired their weapons in any context before their final mission. The Corsairs' dominance forced fundamental tactical doctrine changes. By 1944, standing orders forbade Japanese pilots from engaging Corsairs unless they held 3-to-1 numerical advantage, and even then, they were instructed to complete a single pass and break away if unsuccessful. Official guidance distributed to Japanese pilots late in 1944 acknowledged total inferiority through its very existence. Never climb against a Corsair. Never attempt to dive away from one. Never attempt head-to-head attacks. Their weapons are superior. Never maintain straight and level flight for more than 20 seconds. If attacked by Corsairs, execute a split S maneuver and flee at minimum altitude. Attack only when holding decisive numerical advantage and complete surprise. By early 1945, the military situation had transcended crisis and entered complete chaos. Japanese pilots flew machines that hadn't received proper maintenance in months. Their fuel often contained only 87 octane, when aircraft needed 91 or 100 for optimal engine performance. Ammunition loads were reduced to conserve weight. Meanwhile, American Corsair squadrons, finally approved for carrier operations on December 28, 1944, enjoyed overwhelming operational advantages. They benefited from radar control, functioning rescue operations, dependable maintenance infrastructure, and regular rotation home after completing combat tours. The complete combat record between the Corsair and Zero demonstrated total American air superiority. Overall, Corsair combat statistics showed 2,140 confirmed victories against 189 aircraft lost to all causes, producing an 11.3-to-1 kill ratio. When looking specifically at Corsair versus Zero encounters, the disparity widened. 1,562 confirmed Zero kills against 124 Corsairs lost to Zeros, generating a 12.6-to-1 advantage. Survival statistics revealed a chilling difference. 64% of American pilots who were shot down survived. Only 8% of Japanese pilots shot down survived. The Corsair embodied American industrial philosophy: solve every problem through overwhelming material superiority. The Zero reflected Japanese thinking: extract maximum performance through minimal resource consumption. When these contrasting philosophies collided over the Pacific, material abundance proved absolutely decisive. Jiro Horikoshi, the brilliant engineer who designed the Zero, later reflected on his creation following the war. "I designed a fighter for a nation without resources," he said. "The Americans created a fighter for a nation possessing unlimited resources. My design was an elegant solution to poverty. Theirs was a powerful expression of abundance. In warfare, abundance always wins." When Japanese military personnel examined detailed information about American aircraft manufacturing during occupation, the figures astounded them. Chance Vought alone had constructed nearly as many Corsairs as Mitsubishi had produced Zeros. The cost difference, $50,000 to $75,000 per Corsair versus approximately $25,000 per Zero, revealed not extravagance, but wisdom. Americans invested more because they could afford superior protection for their pilots. The Corsairs' dominance imparted crucial lessons that shaped post-war Japanese development. Technology surpasses tradition. No quantity of pilot skill compensates for inferior equipment. Quantity possesses its own quality. Mass-producing reliable aircraft beats limited production of superior designs. Survivability matters because dead pilots accumulate no experience. Industrial capacity determines capability. The nation possessing superior factories prevails. Innovation pace ultimately trumps initial advantage. Static superiority becomes inevitable inferiority. These lessons became core principles underlying post-war Japanese industry, directly contributing to the remarkable economic transformation that followed. The contest between Japanese pilots and the F-4U Corsair ultimately represented a collision between tradition and modernity. The Zero symbolized the ultimate expression of weight-saving design. Every component stripped down, every gram counted. The Corsair expressed industrial abundance without compromise. Power, protection, firepower, delivered unapologetically. When these opposing philosophies met above Pacific waters, the outcome was mathematically predetermined. No warrior spirit, no traditional tactics, no spiritual dedication could overcome twice the engine power, 6 times the firepower, and substantial armor protection versus complete vulnerability. The Japanese aviators who watched their zero formations dissolve before Corsair squadrons experienced one of military history's most complete psychological reversals. They had entered this war believing in their superiority, technological, spiritual, and tactical. They discovered instead that they piloted obsolete machines, followed outdated tactics, and faced an adversary with essentially unlimited industrial capacity. The Corsair didn't merely defeat Zeros, it demolished an entire worldview. It demonstrated conclusively that industrial capacity trumped warrior tradition, that technological innovation defeated established doctrine, and that protecting pilots mattered more than shaving weight. That bent-wing fighter, which Japanese pilots called Whistling Death, became something paradoxical, an instrument of Japan's eventual transformation. By proving the absolute superiority of industrial democracy over militaristic tradition, the Corsair helped redirect Japan toward becoming one of the world's most successful, peaceful democracies and influential economic powers. The pilots who survived their encounters with the Corsair carried forward a fundamental truth. In the modern era, the nation commanding superior technology and most efficient production emerges victorious. Whether the competition involves warfare or peaceful commerce,